So yes, Mr. Client, I hear you. And this is how we can solve that problem. I think that was the same mentality I took with my team. I think right now they're looking at interest rates and they're saying to themselves, when am I going to be able to refinance this deal and get out of this adjustable rate mortgage for the ones that they purchased? In an operations role, I can tell you that the number one thing that property managers are spending money on, that if we could catch it appropriately and we didn't have to, it is water intrusion. 25th floor, and it's one little pipe, right? We had one during a winter storm. It was one little, what seems like this little bitty pipe, and it busted, and we solved it within 45 minutes. Millions of dollars, because it's down the elevator shaft, frying the elevators.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another live episode of the Multifamily Hangout. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. I'm glad to have you here today with us for another great afternoon, great conversation with an amazing guest. I want to thank our sponsors from Kairos and Coastal Painting Contractors for supporting our podcast and making this podcast possible. With this being said, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host, Chris Moreno. Take it away, sir.
Awesome. Thank you, Adrian. And we are very remote today. So Adrian's out live in Georgia, and I'm actually out in Chicago at the IOA Summit. And we've got Renee. Are you calling in from Austin, Texas, Renee?
I am. I stayed at home so I could be here and focused with you all today.
Love it. Awesome. Well, so excited to have Renee on. Renee is a good friend, podcast, but also an amazing managing director of real estate for Greystar and oversees the management operations of Central West Division, includes his offices in Austin and San Antonio. But I think what's really cool is she oversees an awesome team and she really engages her team. And I know many people who have worked for Renee, they're here in the audience, and some have even shared how really appreciate how she leads and works with the team. But she manages over 51,000 units in her portfolio, and that's anything from strategic operations to current and future clients, as well as pre-development consulting. Renee's been in the industry for numerous years. She has active roles in local and state apartment associations, with the Austin Apartment Association, as well as the Texas Apartment Association. And she was the president of both organizations, which is pretty awesome. So I want to hear a little bit more about that. I think one of the most important things, especially in times like right now, is that relationship between government affairs and actual operations. And she's got just extensive stories, I'm sure, to share on that. Renee also she's very Texas, received her BS in communication studies from the University of Texas, and has her CPM through the Institute of Real Estate Management, and also a women's leadership certificate from the Yale School of Management. So without further ado, thank you for joining us today, Renee. I hear this is also possibly your first time doing a podcast.
Yeah, like this, I feel like I'm a superstar today. And I love when people really call out that you have a BS. It's like I have a BS degree in BS because I have a degree in communications. So, I guess that's what we've learned. That's what we've learned on the job, is really how to be really smart at BSing.
Yeah, cut through the BS. The Bachelor of Science acronym BS.
Every time someone says it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us and spending some time. First thing I want to ask you is, how did you fall into real estate? Was it something you planned on getting into, or was it something you just kind of happened on? Share that story with us.
I always share the example. I don't think anyone shows up and says, man, I really want to be a property manager when I grow up. It wasn't on any of the ASVAB tests that we took in high school. No one even knew that it was a real job. And I had graduated from the University of Texas with that BS degree. And it was right after kind of the .com bubble in Austin, Texas. And if you didn't want to leave, jobs weren't really aplenty. I thought you graduated college and they handed you a cute suit and a briefcase and you got to drive a BMW and the world was your oyster. And that was not the case. And I just needed something on the resume. And so I started leasing apartments. And, like many others in this industry, I appreciated that you didn't call out the number of years, but a handful of years later, here I am, still honestly with the same company. And I know that also makes me a little bit of a unicorn in some ways because I've stuck around my company for so long, but they've really taken good care of me. We were a little bitty company when I started, and we're not a little bitty company anymore.
So Renee, I want to start by going back to how you fell into real estate. How do we make this a decision, a conscientious decision for people, like a choice, not just happenstance type of situation for the candidates? How do we attract more individuals to the industry so they're saying like, I want to follow this career? It's not something random that they just end up doing and then it becomes a career.
Certainly, I think that is a struggle that we're all going through, and it's something even that TAA has found is really important. We've kind of got an entire education foundation solely focused on that, even doing a Be the Next campaign. And so I think it's meeting those candidates where they are and letting them understand that it can be a career as opposed to just a job per se. We're doing all kinds of campaigns. So we identify people who are kind of early in their career and they're the Be the Next ambassadors. And they are doing video productions on Instagram and on TikTok and telling their story, sharing that they started in a certain capacity and it has really created early opportunities. And also recruiting in the right fashion. I think that sometimes people think that they need to go find the person who graduated with a finance degree or something of that nature to really understand real estate. But I think that this is a much more human interaction, maybe why, communications degree or a high school graduate is really the right person too, and really pushing on the maintenance side for some trade schools. So getting them really early in and showing them that it can be a lucrative long-term career. And the other thing I always like to remind them on the operations side, times can be good and you could be on the development side or acquisition side or do all kinds of things with real estate. Even if you were but if you were on the residential side of real estate, meaning in sales. But the one thing that will never go away, no matter what the market presents, is that the buildings are going to be standing and that they're going to need to be operated. And so it withstands all market cycles. Operations withstands all the cycles. So there's some comfort in that as well. We've had a lot of people on the brokerage side actually not have opportunities and come to Greystar to try to see what they can do in operations when there's a lull. And I'm like, be careful, you might like it and you might stick around.
Love that. Yeah, I don't. It's funny how many people don't and have shared they didn't really think about getting into real estate. It wasn't a focus or a long-term thinking, and then they were just working their ways up through the ranks. Fast forward, they're 20 years, 25 years in. So you've been not only the president of the Austin Apartment Association, but also now the Texas Apartment Association. So we'd kind of love to hear how that's maybe shaped your approach to leadership and advocacy, but also like, that's taking on a lot of work, isn't it? Like, do you have a lot of responsibility there, and is it taking away from time, or is it something you've really found a lot of pleasure and enjoyment from?
I will say, selfishly, I've found a lot of pleasure and enjoyment out of it. And what I have found is in every role that you serve at the association level, what the association needs from you is different depending on the role. And I also learned that there are different types of volunteers in an organization like that. Some give of their time, some give of their money, some give of their networking and bring other people. I kind of do a little bit of all of those things. But I've also found that you have to pick how you're going to use your time. When you get really involved and you're working on strategic planning or you're doing some of the big advocacy work, it means I'm probably not going to make all the happy hours. You were hosting a killer happy hour the other day and it sounded amazing. And I was like, you know what? That sounds so awesome, but I have to pick my battles. I have to decide where I'm going to utilize my time. And then I think that the other thing is leaning on the people that you have at your company. I have been really lucky and my company is very supportive of my volunteer responsibilities. So I have an amazing team that picks up some of that when I'm gone. And I think that the question that you ask when you're kind of trying to navigate your schedule and figure all of that out is you assess risk, you assess priority, and then you determine if there's someone else that can handle something on your behalf. And you do figure out that you have a lot of people on both sides, whether at the association level or in my work life. And I think too, you got to get your family to buy in. Whenever I was asked to step up at TAA, the first thing I said is I went to my husband and I was like, man, do you have my back? Like, are you going to be down with this? And it was okay because he was at a different stage in his career. He's a retired. He just got to retire from law enforcement. He's taken on another job because he can't just sit at home all day, but it's much more flexible and we're just at a different time in our lives. And he was like, go get it. I got your back. we've got this. And so we've kind of also worked out those roles together. So I think you also have to make sure that your family's in line with those plans as well. But I will say that is first. I always say what I do at Greystar and what I do at TAA is not going on my headstone. And so I always have to make sure that I'm putting them first.
22 years with the same company, tremendous career so far. You made it to a very senior role within the company. What does it take to stick around for this long? What does it take to get where you are today? A lot of people in the audience would like to hear your story. Like, what are the things that you think help you climb the ladder within the organization? And also, why did you stick around for this long? This is very uncommon, right?
It is uncommon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that probably what has made me successful is I got in at a time that the company was really growing. And so there was always an opportunity, and we continue to grow. So there are always opportunities. I think that number one is being flexible. When I go back to being like a site level manager, and there was, maybe the property wasn't the one that I was the most excited about, but it was the one that they came and tapped me on the shoulder and they said, your skill set could be really utilized here. And I said, okay. And then, you got to ask a little bit about, well, what's in it for me if I do that? You still have to look out for yourself. So, looking out for yourself as well as the company, but being able to be flexible and saying, you know what, this one may not be perfect, but I can make an impact here and I can learn something. I also learned that the more I could expose myself to different leaders. So I learned that if I was on one particular property, it wasn't even the property that maybe I wanted to leave. It was like, I learned a lot from you. I'm ready. I see that Jane Doe over there, she looks like she's doing some cool stuff. I want to go learn from her too. And so I remember when I was interviewing like for an RPM level, Jackie Roan, who's really big at Greystar, she looked at me and she asked me, she's like, well, if you don't know how to do something, who are you going to talk to? And I said, well, you know what? I've worked for every regional manager that sits in this office, and every one of them I have learned something different from, and I can go knock on every single one of their doors. And she didn't know that about me. She didn't know that I had kind of spread myself around in that way. And that made me, I think, in some ways more valuable. And then another, flexibility still is key. This last year, one of the questions you guys had that was kind of like, what was the step I took that was really exciting or made a change? I took on a completely different side of our business in client services. So sales, negotiating contracts, not in the operations. And it was something that like I knew a little bit about. I like enough to be dangerous. But man, it exposed me to a completely different side of the business, and it has made me more well-rounded in my new role.
You're 100% right when you were saying Greystar was a tiny company in 2002. When I joined them in 2006, they were the 5th largest company. I can only imagine 3 years before that.
Yes.
So you grew with Greystar, and Greystar grew to become the dominating force in multifamily, almost 1 million apartment homes under management. I want to ask you, Renee, what are some lessons that you learned from being part of scaling this business at an unmatched level in a history?
Ooh, sometimes change comes fast, and you gotta just roll. You gotta roll with the punches, and you've gotta remain positive even when it feels like the change is coming at you so fast. Sometimes change comes fast. And you gotta just roll. You gotta roll with the punches, and you've gotta remain positive even when it feels like the change is coming at you so fast. I think it's hard, but we can do it. The yes and philosophy, right? There's a book called Yes and. So yes, Mr. Client, I hear you, and this is how we can solve that problem. I think that was the same mentality I took with my team. They're like, this is so hard. And I'm like, yes, Adrian, it is hard. And think about when we come out on the other side, how much you're going to have grown and what you're going to have learned when you come out on the other side. So I think it is embracing change and not taking things when things are clunky and they're stressful, not letting it impact you too personally. We always say, like, we're not heart surgeons. We're not here saving lives. We are here creating homes, and it is important in people's lives, but we're going to make mistakes. But most of the time, it's not any mistake that isn't fixable.
That's awesome and very true. I'd love to hear a story maybe about one of the significant milestones or professional achievements that you've had at Greystar and the impact it had on you and your career.
I go back to this last year, and I think it was the year of 2023, not 2024, when I was challenged to take on client services because it was way out of my comfort zone. But someone touched me on the shoulder and said, we think you need this because we think it's going to make you more well-rounded for the future. And so it's those touches on the shoulder, and I've had other ones like that. Those touches on the shoulder are the ones that I think are the big moments. When we've grown a portfolio outside of the region, I was touched on the shoulder at one point when we were going to grow in West Texas. Well, ironically, I was from West Texas and I knew what West Texas was like. Feels like a small portfolio now. We had one deal there and we grew it to 13 or 14 during the oil boom and navigated that. But it was all because of those just shy touches on the shoulder that you said, oh, they see value in me. I'm going to go figure out how I can, make a difference here.
You mentioned clients in a previous answer of yours. I want to ask you next, what are some things that from the conversation with the clients, Greystar's clients, what are the main things that keep them up at night in this current environment?
I think what is keeping them up at night is their adjustable rate mortgages on the deals that they bought in 2020, 2021, and 2022 do they have enough revenue to keep the lights on, as a handful of them. And then for our development clients, I think a similar story. It is most of our development clients, or a lot of our development clients are, they are merchant builders. So they were looking to build, fill it up, sell. And the market is not indicating that today. And so they're thinking to themselves, oh, what kind of debt, what kind of loan am I going to need to look at to take this off of my construction loan and put it on a straightforward loan? So I think right now they're looking at interest rates and they're saying to themselves, when am I going to be able to refinance this deal and get out of this adjustable rate mortgage for the ones that they purchased? I think the ones that are developing are thinking those same things. And the ones that bought before, they're thinking, man, I really have held on to this and I've weathered the storm, and just trying to navigate, I guess, the timeline for themselves, and what they had promised to their investors. Do they have exit strategies that they have to uphold? Sometimes they're in funds that, have to exit. So I think that the biggest thing right now is about interest rates, and then what is going to come down the pipe legislatively, as we talk about fee transparency, as we talk about pricing and all of those topics that are really making all of the headlines right now. We are now at the top of the food chain when we think about the headlines.
And now a word from Dean Fungawing, founder and CEO, Kairos.
We've invented this smart material. It's a conductive material that can be shaped or sized for any area. So if you think about high spatial coverage, you look at a giant mechanical room. How do we cover a whole mechanical room with a sensor, right? We've developed the strip sensor to create containment areas where if water were to leave this threshold, you would instantly know about it. We created special sensors for high moisture environments like bathrooms. You're like, well, I don't want to get a bunch of false alarms from the steamy shower. Well, we fixed that because we can actually print the sensor in a way that it's less sensitive or more sensitive based on the environment. And so we've been able to solve really weird issues. Like, I challenge any multifamily owner that's got a water problem to come to us and say, can you help us solve this? Because we've done this for a 158-year-old site in San Francisco, 100-year-old building here in Atlanta. You have a hodgepodge of plumbing, very difficult situations to solve, and we've solved them, right? From our very first customer to the customers that we have today. Again, every one of them has seen an ROI based off of the historical losses. Again, historical losses is the key thing that you need in order to solve the problem and justify the ROI.
Diving into, like, as you're talking about construction, development, but even sustainability. And you think about sustainability has been tough for a lot of companies. Chris Sacca over at Lower Carbon Capital talks about, we need to be real. And when we're thinking about it, that it can't just be a better option that's going to help the planet. It has to be something that pencils out and helps someone make money, because we're in the business of making money. It has to have a better NOI or ROI. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts of how you're thinking about sustainability from that approach, not only in the development side, but maybe in the long-term side for buildings that have already been open for 10, 20 years.
The one that resonates with me the most, and this is less sustainability in some ways, but more like risk and thinking about how you're utilizing power and water, is water intrusion. In an operations role, I can tell you that the number one thing that property managers are spending money on, that if we could catch it appropriately and we didn't have to, it is water intrusion. So leak detectors, things of that nature. I think that they all have a hard time figuring out exactly what the ROI is on all of those items. But I can tell you, as a person who reviews every incident report that comes across a region, the amount of money that clients spend on water intrusion is crazy. If someone can figure that out, it is a game changer.
I have a friend who's working on that. We'll make sure to connect them to you. But yeah, that's the scariest thing. Adrian knows I had, in Atlanta, it doesn't get that cold, but this year we had freeze warnings, and I thought I made it through. And it was the last day, as the temperature was going up, my pipe burst in my house. And, it wasn't so much, the cost was up there, but what was bigger was the just pain of having to deal with it. I can only imagine these apartment buildings that had pipe bursts or leakages or bathtubs overflowing. I remember living in a Greystar building in San Francisco. A hallway was flooding, and they didn't know what was going on. And I knew the building manager, and I called him and I said, I think you want to come at 7:00 at night. I think you want to come see this. He goes, oh my God, thanks, Chris, for calling me up. This is the scariest thing I've ever seen. Water causes a lot of problems.
The thing that's so different on the multifamily side, it depends on the type of building, but if you're in a high rise, that starts on the 25th floor. And it's one little pipe, right? We had one during a winter storm. It was one little, what seems like this little bitty pipe, and it busted, and we solved it within 45 minutes. Millions of dollars, because it's down the elevator shaft, frying the elevators. When you're on floor 23 and it happens, it's floors 23 all the way down that have damage and an intrusion to their lives. And I don't know if you know this, but elevator parts are not easy to come by. We had elevators down for months because you're waiting on custom parts to be built and things of that nature. So one little pipe can make all the difference.
You're absolutely right, Renee. And also the great news, the amazing news is that there's technology that's already developed out there and is matured to prevent all of that from happening. There's some amazing technology that I happen to be, exposed to, that almost eliminates like all that, even the 45-minute delay. It cuts the water off before it becomes a leak or a major flood. You did mention the challenges, right? Floods, water intrusion being one of them. And then you mentioned the challenges that the clients have and what keeps them up at night. What are some opportunities that you see for us as an industry, Renee, in this current environment?
I think that the job market is beginning to shift a bit. And so when we talked early on about how are you making sure that the next generation knows that this is a career path, I will say I can see from my seat that we are starting to see that shift. We are really starting to see people come to us early on and really finding it as a way for a true career path. And when you think about the volume that we need, I did a quick exercise this year for Austin. So Austin had 45,000 units under construction, an unheard of number. We typically deliver about 12,000 a year. It's why we're in the red zone on every map that I ever pull for rent growth or whatever is happening in our industry. But I did the quick math, and just for all of those new units that were being delivered to Austin, we would need 1,500 new people in the city of Austin to join our industry. people that were not touching it at all. We needed 1,500 people this year to join the industry. And so we need to capitalize on that. We need to capitalize on those people, show them that it is a career path, and really then have them start recruiting their friends, their family members, that next generation. And I think that it will bring this industry up to a more professional level. I feel like every time we're interviewing someone, we interviewed and we just extended an offer to a gentleman on Friday. And not even Friday. What day is it? Today's Thursday. Tuesday. It was 2 days ago. Flew him in. He was moving from out of town. Flew him in. He was brilliant. And I was like, this is not the kind of guy a long time ago that you would have been finding that would be doing this job. And at 28 years old, and he is all in. So I think that they are seeing that it is the true career path.
Talking about career paths, and you talked about some people who tapped you on the shoulder. Jackie Roan, amazing leadership. She served traveling the world on behalf of the industry and NAA, and I got to speak with her a few times over my career. Who are some of the other people that maybe have stood out that helped you in your career as mentors, and maybe even to this day that you want to call out and maybe share some examples of ways people can help others?
Sure. I hadn't really thought about that. So I reported to the same supervisor at Greystar for a long time. Her name's Savannah Bogardus, and she's still with Greystar today. Here is what she taught me. I also kind of attribute her being like my side mom. I lost my mom as a kid at 12 years old. And so she also was like my mentor, like as a mom in some ways. She's not old enough to be my mom, but she just was like a very motherly person. You were to ask anyone the way that she leads forward, it's just kindness. Like she cares about humans like no one else. And we had a running joke because I think I was more business. And so I had a joke that I had a black heart. And it really is not that I have a black heart. It actually means I care and I feel for people really deeply, but I'm also sometimes okay just making some business decisions and sometimes having some very clear conversations about challenges. And she really helped me soften up a little bit. I think I helped her maybe become a little more clear, and we blended between the two of us together. But that she definitely had a huge impact on me. And gosh, it's funny. I'm always going to lean on the ladies. Tony Eubanks too. I've never actually reported directly to her, but I'll never forget. When we acquired JPI, she was part of that. She was part of the leadership team at JPI. Now she runs all of Greystar operations. And she talks about how she was stressed and she was so nervous. She had joined this new company and, was really nervous. And I remember she'll tell the story every time. And she's like, I just put my head down and did the work. And I think of that often about when you feel nervous and you feel like you can't do it, or you're not sure what's coming at you, you just put your head down and you do the work. And oftentimes the person who puts their head down and does the work, then they're like, oh, they didn't get stressed. They didn't get all nervous. They didn't panic, and they got it done. And gosh, we know she gets it done. She still gets it done. And she knows everything. So if there's something you think she doesn't know at Greystar, she does.
Renee, a good part of our audience consists of professionals that are working on a service provider side. So I want to ask a question that is on everybody's minds. If I was prepping right now to have a meeting with Renee to do a pitch, to convince her that, I have a service or a product that she needs to use or she could use, how would you coach me? How would I approach Renee to impress her and possibly get a chance at her business?
First and foremost, I think one of the things is when we're at Greystar, it's harder for us to take something if it hasn't been vetted. And that's the one, sometimes when you work for a big company, it's the one thing that you feel a little more, I don't want to call it handcuffed. I love working for Greystar, but you feel a little more handcuffed because sometimes it's got to be vetted to a very big level before they're going to present it at Greystar. So what you're asking me versus maybe someone else, first of all, I don't want a cheesy pitch. I don't want 87 emails. And it's always easier if I already have somewhat of a relationship with you. And I want a quick 30-minute, 40-minute coffee meeting. And we're going to talk some niceties for a minute, but then I want you to really I want you to also understand my business. I hope that you know a little bit about what kinds of properties I have, how my relationship is. So at Greystar, at least the business I support is fee managed. So it's important for a supplier to understand how fee management is different than owner management, because the way that you sell that product can be very different. Because oftentimes you can sell it to me and I may love it, but I have to love it enough to go then try to sell it to my client. So I have to act as a salesperson too. So you got to really educate me so that if I'm going to be aligned with you, I have to believe in it enough that I'm going to go be willing to put my name on it as well, because I'm usually having to convince my fee client to take it on as well. It made me feel as educated and as smart on the product, and let me know the with them, the what's in it for me. Let me know that so that I can share that as well.
Yeah, so true. I think back to when I was early in my career and coming out hot and heavy, right? It's now interesting because I see how so many other folks and I go, man, this isn't obvious. To understand your business and understand where you're coming from and, vetting it. So yeah, it's great feedback. I'm kind of curious, and I remember actually touring in Austin. I think it was Austin, or was it Austin or San Antonio when we toured properties? I think it was Austin.
I think it was Austin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have those new developments which were going on. So yeah, thanks for being an early supporter of us when we were building our business. There's always good times and there's tough times. And I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on some of these tough times when you had to pivot or maybe adapt a new strategy quickly because of the changes in the market. Maybe that might have been 2020, might have been even more recently, it might have been the 2017 changes. I want to get your thoughts on maybe some times that stand out in your mind.
The biggest thing that we've been working through today's time is reminding ourselves that most of the people that are operating the real estate, even at the asset manager level, haven't lived through really tough times. So the last time we had a really big downturn was 2008, 2009. Well, the average asset manager, regional manager, and certainly property manager was not in this industry back then. And so this is a first for them. So I think what I have found is what we are really doing is a lot of education and an encouragement that making some mistakes are going to be fine because they've just not been through it. And so often on the fee side, we're not only saying what we think we should be doing, but we're having to educate an asset manager on why that is a good plan because they haven't been through it. Just today, I had someone mention that, well, your leads are just not as good as the leads in Denver and in Tempe. And I'm like, well, Denver and in Tempe, they didn't deliver 45,000 units. And so the leads that we're getting are all vying for all of those same units. And so they're probably not as good or as qualified because there's just too many units to go around and not enough humans. And so just making sure that they're not just saying, well, it should be the same because it's this. There are so many different factors that they need to be taking into account when they're thinking through that and making those decisions. So it has been a lot of very basic education. I know one of the things we talked about was how are you using data? And let me tell you, we've got those asset managers, those asset managers do have finance degrees and they do expect you to have some data to back it up. So making sure that you have really good data to back up everything that you're sharing is really important as well. And then educating them on the basic stuff, educating them on the fact that follow-up is so important, right? Like our teams, they do have to email them and text their customers and really follow up with them to get them to close the lease because there's just so many options. And I think that on the asset management side, that wasn't a thing. 2 years ago, you didn't have to do that. Our leasing professionals 2 years ago, they just had to maybe show you an apartment, or maybe you were moving from California sight unseen and they didn't even have to show you one. They might've gone and taken a FaceTime video with you for you to see it as you were moving from California. And now they're moving out of state and we're finding local people and there's specials and offers and we're really having to work much harder for every piece of traffic.
Renee, you had an outstanding career. So many in the industry are looking up to you. They want to become you one day, maybe. What are some pieces of advice that you have for young aspiring leaders in the industry?
Remain curious, ask a lot of questions, be flexible. We talked about flexibility earlier. I think that that is so important. The other thing I would say, and this is something I am still learning. So anything I'm focusing on, this sounds so like an old lady when I tell you this, that I have a handful of sticky notes hanging from my monitor, but I do. If it's something that's really important, that is my focus for the year, I put a sticky note. And the one that I have now is shut up and listen. And that is because I need to be doing more listening than talking. I need to be asking questions. I need to be hearing how things are working. I need to understand what it's like on the field. So shut up and listen or ask more questions than you speak is really probably one of my biggest pieces of advice. I've been taking a lot of my team members to coffee. It's just coffee. Coffee is my favorite meeting, right? Gets me out of the house super early. It solves a problem. It doesn't go in the middle of your day. And so those are my favorite meetings, but I have committed that I will go to coffee with every member of our team, of my local team, because I learn more about what is working in our company over 30 minutes of coffee than I can in any meeting that we sit in.
I love coffee too, and I'm trying to switch to tea though, Renee. That's the thing I'm working on. It's not easy. Have you ever had to switch from a different drink, or are you always always been?
The problem is I love coffee, and then I'm a true Texan. I love iced tea in the afternoon, and so it's bad if you do both all day long. One cup of coffee. I'm not like I don't drink it all day, but I gotta have one good cup of coffee in the morning.
I had a boss who used to do 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. every day. Cut back to try to just do midday, but you know what? We all got our vices, right? So, future president of the Texas Department Association, you've worked your way to that point. It's a multi-year approach, but also you've got probably multi-year. As you mentioned earlier, there's things you work at certain times, right? You have to have your priorities in line. What are some of the priorities that you're going to be working on as you think about leading the multifamily industry in Texas?
So it's a legislative year next year in Texas. So state legislature will meet. So that there will be a lot of things. We try to navigate coming up with what we want to focus on for any kind of positive legislation, meaning legislation that we would actually want someone to carry for us moving forward. But we also then need to be prepared. What is the legislation that could come at us that we then have to work to defend? And similar to what you just said with suppliers, the legislative world really is a relationship business. And so it is partnering we have legislative aides within TAA, but it's coffee meetings with legislators. It is making sure that we are the go-to so that when a bill lands on their desk and they're not sure about it, they don't know a lot about our industry, that we are a phone call away for them to be able to say, this bill landed on my desk and it kind of sounds like I should support it, but I don't know, like, how does it impact you? And making sure that we are, a force for them and a comfort zone for them to pick up the phone and call. And it's also even bringing forward some innovation within our organization at TAA. So we have a huge conference that we put on every spring. We have worked really hard and we are making lots of changes to how the conference is going to be put on because we're trying to attract that new generation of users. We found that the average attendee is about 25 to 35. So we are really working with those that understand social media, that want that connection, that are really interested in technology. And so we need things to be easy. So we're also really working on really improving the conference experience for the Texas Department Association.
Renee, you mentioned technology, and my next question happens to be about technology. Since COVID, we've been assaulted, inundated by technology. In so many ways, this is great, right? Innovation, it's always great. At the end of the day, makes the society move forward. Now, on the operator side, you have so much technology. And how do you pick the right technology? What's your process of vetting technology? What's the right technology? What's the technology that you would take in? What's your system to determine that?
The biggest thing is I try to remind myself, like, is this going to make my team members' lives easier, or is it going to be one more thing? So really asking the frontline users how this would impact them I think is really important. I just pulled one up. I told you my old boss, Savannah, she sent it to me via Instagram, right? Because we get advertised these things on Reels or whatever it is. It is an AI program designed for construction managers. So I'm walking the site, I'm talking to it. Maybe I snap a couple photos, and then it uses AI to draft a full report for me to send out to my client of what the status of a project is, and creates a to-do list for me and maybe follow-up action items of who I need to call, what I need to do. And that is the one piece my construction team keeps telling me, like, we're out on site so much, the follow-ups aren't happening. And I'm like, well, can we try this? And it was super affordable. And so to me, if I already have a need, someone has already said, this is a problem, and it lands in my lap and it's a solution, we got to try it. We got to vet it. We got to see if it's worthy. If it's just one more new thing that just feels like an extra thing, that is the last thing I want. I always talk about this too. Like when I was a property manager, we didn't have TikTok. I wasn't having to make TikToks and Instagram reels. I wasn't having to text my customers. There were so many things that our teams are responsible to do today that we weren't doing a long time ago, but we didn't add any more people. We just gave them more work. And so I need things that take off work.
I salute you for coming on with us as you talk about trying new things and coming onto the platform. We'll definitely have to have a version 2, and anyone you recommend future, we'd love to have on. We've had, I think by far, Greystar has been the #1 org to join. I think we've had now like 6 or 7 executives, which is incredible. I will ask you, it's funny because we're trying, we're now utilizing LinkedIn Live and YouTube, and Adrian has done a phenomenal job to where we're available on every platform. But it's great to share people's stories. There has been some consolidation. There are a lot of challenges happening, but that presents a lot of opportunities. What do you think are some of the key factors that are going to determine the success of multifamily owners, multifamily developers, into the next decade that you work with?
I think that the biggest thing is they've got to really listen to the renter. They've got to understand what the renter cares about, what is important to the renter. I can tell you, what our philosophy is. Our philosophy is, whether you agree with it or not, whether it's because houses are expensive or not, I think it's yet to be determined. Our renters by choice, or our renters because they have to. The long story of that is, though, they are renting longer. People are renting much longer. And so I think that the thought process for us is listen to them, hear what they want, and meet them where they are. We're going to pick them up as a student. We're then going to potentially have them stay in an Airbnb unit. Like when they travel somewhere, they go to a bachelor party or they go to a party or a gathering. They then say, "Ooh, I want to move to that city." They lease with us in conventional. Perhaps they start to grow. They're more mature. Then they lease with us in a BTR unit. And at some point, we might even land them in one of our active adult communities. And so if we're listening to the renter and we are really delivering on what they need and what they are asking for, we can meet them at any place in their renter cycle.
That is so cool. And obviously you are all aligned in your discussion points. I don't even know if you knew this. Gardner Reese spoke at NAA on the resident experience with Lane Gomez and Stephanie Furman. Were you at that session?
I was not. I mean,
the reason I ask is,
but I was not there.
The reason I ask is what you just said. I just brought a flashback back to what he was talking about around that resident experience from when they first step foot on the leasing tour, that experience, and then moving in, and why aren't they using, these different platforms, and why aren't we there to deliver that? So that was really interesting. I agree with you. I think as people travel around and they experience and they go through different parts of their life, you got to be ready to engage them on their terms, right? Whether you like it or not. So really appreciate you sharing that.
The things that work well should translate to any of those. So it should be simple anywhere. I should have a similar experience at a student deal in Austin, Texas, as I would at the high-rise building you lived at in San Francisco, to an active adult deal in Florida.
Renee, you mentioned the need for our industry to attract new people. I believe 1,500 new employees just for the, what's being built in Austin, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, so this brings my next question to, is the industry ready for a Uber-like model where people that have availability to work, they don't want to make a commitment full-time to work for a company with benefits. They could pick and choose the time of the day or the day of the week, the days of the week that they want to work. Do you see a future for that type of model for employment? Not to take over necessarily, but at least to be possible, to be an alternative for full-time employment in apartment industry.
So honestly, yes. And there was a program that I know during 2020, when 2021 too, when we were growing really fast and we were really short, when people were harder to come by because they could go work at a tech firm for a gajillion dollars. There was something that we looked into that offered something of that sort. I don't remember the name of the app or the program. Might be one that you're talking to. But we did certainly look into it, and even hiring for a particular job. Oftentimes on a property, you've got a groundskeeper, but you need someone that really is just going to come pressure wash for 3 days. And so perhaps that's a short-term assignment that someone would want to take on. I think the most important thing to navigate and figure out is insurance requirements and all of those goodies. But I absolutely think that there would be a time that would happen. And if you really think too about the BTR business, that is a business where they are really trying to operate it with a very slim work, like I guess maintenance load or just team members. But there's still going to be needs. There are going to be needs that could absolutely be a solution.
The reason why I popped the question was I'm traveling a lot. I talk to Uber and Lyft drivers. I don't remember like a single instance where one of them said that they have the desire to go back and have a full-time job.
That's right.
So
the flexibility, they love
it. Exactly. So there's a real desire for people to have that flexibility and also have the power to call the shots, like when they want to be at work, when they don't want to be at work, versus the Monday to Friday model or whatever full-time model that puts the decision on the other side of management, because management sets the needs and the employee has to obviously fulfill those needs. So I agree with you right there. I think that the examples are being shown that they're working. People have a desire to do that. It's just a matter of time for multifamily to actually adopt a model like that too. Like I said, maybe not primary, but at least as an alternative, or like just a secondary. There's just so many open positions out there.
Yeah, and on that topic, and kind of touches on what you said earlier about maybe living in an Airbnb or staying in an Airbnb when you travel, or a hotel. You just talked about BTR. I'd love to get a breakdown, if you could kind of share in your market, how do you think about the makeup of your portfolio, the differences between BTR, STR? Is it short? Do you have short term? Do you have like for nurses and corporate living? How are you handling that? Are you doing it yourselves? Are you doing it through other partners? How do you think about that?
Greystar does have a national partnership with Airbnb. So it has to be that the client has chosen to participate in the program. What it does is actually allows the resident to partner. And if I'm a resident and I live there and I want to put my unit with permission, that's the difference, right? It's partnering with us with permission, that you can then put your unit on Airbnb. And so there's some benefits, right? Like we already know it's likely going to happen anyway. So let's work together and just make it better for everyone. Doesn't mean that you can lease your unit every day. It's usually got limitations of so many days a year, things of that nature. But we know that there is a need. We know that residents want to have that as an offering. So just like the people that don't want to work all the time, these people are traveling. They'd like a way to make some extra dollars on their apartment home. So let's not push them away. Let's work with them. So that is a program that we are offering. Some of the questions that you guys had mentioned, the affordable units. So the units that have some sort of like city mandated or state mandated or government mandated affordability requirements because of maybe incentives that they got for building or there are many different reasons as to why those would be in place. That has grown exponentially. So in Texas alone, in the last 5 years, we now have 8,800 units with an affordability component. So we've also had to really shift our management style and really go to school really quickly, learning the requirements of those programs, getting some experts in the field on our team, and some supplier partnerships for approving all of those files. because there are some extra steps required in that. But making sure too, like we said, you're meeting every renter where they are. You're meeting ultra high luxury down to workforce housing. In Austin, we did this killer participation with the Austin Apartment Association, offering specific discounts to teachers. We all know how hard it is for all of the school districts these days to bring in new teachers. And so we partnered with them with a list of properties throughout the MSA that had discounts and special offers specifically available for teachers. It was funny. There was a news article, I think this one night this week, and the city of Austin did this huge study to see if they wanted to build apartments specifically for teachers. There was a little small town in West Texas, Pecos, that did it. I think they built 84 units. It was wildly successful. And I'm like, we're doing this, and you don't even have to go build them. Like, save your money because they already exist and we're already offering them. And I was like, I wish I could get this. I need to write into the news. I actually need to get the Austin Apartment Association to write into the news. Like, you did this whole news article. One building would give you 200 apartments. We've already got 5,000 of them for you.
Renee, as we approach the end of this amazing conversation today, one of the things that I ask almost every single guest on a show is, when it's all said and done for you, decades from now, and when you look back, how would you like to be remembered? What would you like your legacy to be?
This industry has provided opportunities for me that I never thought, right? That whole, I got a leasing job, never knew what it would turn into. And I still think there's more to come. And I want others to have that same experience. There's people that have worked under me that have gone into different roles. They've gone into marketing and revenue management or all kinds of different spaces. And it's also finding the right role for the human. So we've also sometimes given someone a role and then they're like, I'm not killing it. I'm not successful. And I'm like, I know, but you're so freaking smart in X. We're going to figure out how to find the right seat for you to do that. And so I think for me, it's about, I want to know that the opportunities I was given, that I multiplied that opportunity with other people like 100X. That I was able to give those people opportunities that were as impactful for their lives.
If I had to give you a score from 1 to 10, Renee, I got to give you 11. So you rocked it. Yeah, a little Spinal Tap reference there, movie reference. You did great, and it was awesome to share your stories. I know you have more to share, and you're going to continue to build an incredible career and mentor and work with a lot of folks. I know that number is going to continue to increase, the number of units under management. So you've been great to work with over my career. Thank you. Like you said, I've been given so many opportunities from this industry and from people like you who've spent time with me and mentored me. So thank you for that. I'm excited to see you again in real life down in Texas, but and if not in Atlanta at the AOD. Hopefully, will you be there? Okay.
I should be
Will
there,
you be at Optic? Yeah. Do you think you'll be at Optic this year?
No, I will not be at Optic.
No worries. Well, thank you so much for hopping on. We'll continue this journey and we'll have to have an episode number 2 and maybe even recommend some other podcasts for you to go on in the future. All right.
You bet. I really appreciate you, gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hanging out with us. Renee, I just want to share with the audience that not a single question was written in our initial scenario, not a single question that I've asked. You inspire me to ask, so many questions that were
We
not
went off script.
I went 100% off script. Not a single question that I've asked today was on that initial plan that we had. So, and you did amazing. And I thank you for that. Thank the audience for joining us today, for hanging out. You guys are special. Come back next Thursday, 3 p.m. For the first time, we're going to have not one, but 2 guests, their father and son. One successfully leads a management company. The other one successfully leads a tech company. So there's be a great conversation. JC and Dave Holland from New York State. So, stay tuned. See you next Thursday at 3 p.m. In closing, want to thank our sponsors from Kairos and Coastal Painting Contractors for making this episode possible. See you all next Thursday, 3 p.m. as always. Have an amazing afternoon.